I've noticed now, just in my notes, I know this happens again later on, there's a very descriptive detail about this troll's swinging testicles. Hello everyone to the 28th episode of the Audiobook Club podcast. It's me, Jason, your host, and today I have with me Michael and Jonathan. If you just want to say hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Yeah, so episode 28. Today we are reviewing the book The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne and narrated by Colin Mac. This book, I could probably spend ages trying to give you an introduction, but essentially it's a book set in a fictional Viking world where it follows three characters, Orca, Varg and Elvar, and then the chapters are split into their point of views, and they all get a sort of fair chunk each. I don't think anyone gets a massive amount more than the others, but it just follows the trails of these three. Essentially they're all three Viking warriors and the sort of trials and tribulations of the world they're living in. That was where we sort of left it last time. I'll just have a wee look through the guesses from the three of these last time. So Johnny thought it might be something to do with Shrek and a tiny wee man, and that was incorrect, unfortunately.
What?
Stephen did mention something about the gods being gone in this world and monsters being in this place, and then he also went on to say about a tiny man rising up to fight monsters. Michael likened it to a world under another world, something akin to like Mount Olympus. He said the monsters are gods that reign over people, and the world people are prey, monster gods are predators that rule the world. I think for the guessing game, I'm gonna give it to Stephen, who's not even here to accept this prize. The reason why I'm going to do that is just because he was the first to guess about the monsters being gone, the gods being gone. Although there were no tiny wee men, as far as I'm aware. I think the guesses were a bit all out there, but I do think Michael and Stephen were definitely the closest, but I think Stephen just snatches him personally. Any objections to that, Michael?
There are slight objections. I think Stephen's guess is the only part of Stephen's guess that is accurate. Is the gods being gone. I think multiple parts of mine are accurate, but I'll accept your ruling either way.
I'll agree to disagree. So I think I've touched on this a wee bit last time, but why did I actually pick this book? Honestly, the only reason why I chose this book because it was on a $2.99 sale, and I thought the cover looked cool.
I mean, that's as good a reason as any, I think.
Yeah, it was cheap, cheap, and it looked dank. I have spoken to Steve, and he has given me he's actually given me quite a detailed review, but I'll maybe leave that till the very end, more when we're doing the star ratings, I think.
Has he only given a spoiler review? He hasn't given any non-spoiler summary?
He's given me a fairly large summary, but I think most of it would probably be spoilers. So
Just to bring up that Stephen is not here because his girlfriend has given birth, or his fiance now, isn't it? To a second child.
Yeah, fiance.
So, like, honestly, it's no excuse. I can't believe he's not here.
Yeah. Stephen's review is very detailed, but there's a lot of spoilers, I would say, so I'm just going to leave it to the end. But I can give you the vibe of what he thinks.
I can give us
I would like to know, like, just for my own curiosity.
Stephen's vibe was he did not have fun.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Stephen hates epic fantasy.
He really does.
he's been negative on every epic fantasy book we've done.
He hated Mistborn too.
He absolutely despised Mistborn.
Well, he might have despised this more.
I'm surprised at that more than Mistborn, because I thought this would have been Stephen's type of book.
That's a
for some reason.
This is what he says. He's like, he's surprised he didn't like it because the background, lore, everything's right up his alley. But we'll touch on that more. Would you care to give me your sort of thoughts, Michael, about what you thought about it, or?
Yeah, so way at the very beginning of this podcast, I think on even the Harry Potter and Philosopher's Stone episode, I said that sometimes what I like to do is I like to break down books into different elements, usually the plot, the characters, the setting, and then depending on the type of book, sometimes the theme is a major element, sometimes theme isn't a major element in a book. Sometimes the writing style is a major element, sometimes it's not really. So just kind of thinking of the book in that terms, I would have different views. They'd be at different levels for me, different things. If I'm going to start off on the highest positive first, I will say the setting is absolutely incredibly well done. The world building is fantastic. John Gwynne's, you can tell he's just obsessed. You just know from reading this that he's obsessed with Vikings and Norse mythology. You just know this man has done endless research into that kind of world and used that as a basis for this world. It feels so well realized. It's so deep. It's so rich. The lore, the history of the world, it's so well realized. It's such a cool world too. There's so many unique monsters and so many interesting cultures coalescing around each other. So I think that aspect of the book is absolutely fantastic. Another area I thought that was really good would be probably, I would say, John Gwynne's writing style was really strong as well. The only issue I would have with his writing is he goes into a lot of detail about clothes, which is very good on it. Like an epic fantasy book, you expect that. If you read like any epic fantasy, the landscapes and clothes are like endlessly described. And there's some really beautiful descriptions of landscapes in this book. But the clothes just kept going. Every time a new character would walk on, there'd be endless description of what they were wearing. And it sort of felt a bit like a parody at times. Because I told you guys, I read American Psycho, and that is like something that they parody in that book. Like everybody gets described what they're wearing down to minute detail. So that was kind of nearly comical to me to hear that. But at the same time, some of the descriptions of the landscapes and the cities are just beautiful and so well written. So I would say that's a big positive. Going on to character then. This is where I have a bit mixed feelings. Because I've read a lot of reviews about this book. I read like one of my favorite fantasy authors, Robin Hobb, gushing about this on Goodreads. Mark Lawrence, another big name in fantasy, gushing about this. If you look on so many review sites, there's just so much positivity. And one thing I kept seeing of them was saying like unforgettable characters. I didn't really feel that way, to be honest. Orca, I can see it with maybe. She was a really, really good character, really interesting character with a lot of backstory baked in and everything. But then Varg, I thought he was a good character, but not fantastic or anything. I felt he felt a bit one note after a while. Like he had that goal where he wanted to avenge his sister and that he was a slave. And it kind of felt like we never got to know him beyond that. There wasn't anything more developed for him, at least what I felt. Obviously, getting into spoiler territory, something is revealed about Varg later in the story that does, I think, add an interesting element to him. But I still felt there wasn't much growth or there wasn't much change throughout the story, maybe as much as I would have wanted. And then Elvar, I definitely think she was the weakest point of view character. I just didn't get anything from her that I didn't already have from Varg chapters, such as the mercenary group. It felt very sameish in that way. And then Orca's personality, like her kind of tough veneer, I didn't get anything different from Elvar, so I nearly feel like she could have been left out of this book and it would have probably even felt like a stronger book to me. But maybe in the series overall, Elvar is going somewhere and she's involved for some reason. But I didn't feel any massive connection to her there. The plot, I thought it was really exciting at times. There's a lot of action scenes in this book and the action is really well done. Again, the descriptions of the action, it's just breakneck and you're really into it. But at the same time, some part of me felt like not a lot happened in this book, despite there being a lot of death and a lot of people dying and a lot of conflict. It didn't move the needle a lot in terms of plot until maybe the last 25% of the book. And when it did start to move it, it was really, really exciting. so it really got into it at the end. But there was times I felt like, again on the spoiler territory, the characters don't really converge in this book until later on, and I felt like maybe that convergence could have happened a bit earlier, and it would have been a bit more, made this book a bit more interesting. But again, maybe John Gwynne's just thinking of this in terms of series, and that was what I was thinking, kind of what I said about Reliance way back when as well, that it had a bit of setup-itis. You know, it was a kind of a setup book. I think that maybe there's some of that in this book as well. So that's basically my overall thoughts. I'd say on the strength of the world building, I'd say this is definitely a good book. But I still struggle with like all the reviews that are saying it's utterly breathtakingly amazing. I don't feel that strongly about it because of things like the character and plot. Doesn't feel quite as strong to me as the world building, is what I would say. But overall, I still think that I'm quite positive on this book.
Yeah, I think it was a very good summary there, Michael. A lot of what you said is a lot of what I have read and seen and thought myself. So it's definitely, I would agree with you on probably most of that, to be honest. Johnny, have you much to add at all? Or?
I mean, yeah, I do agree with a lot of what Michael said, and I think that your high-level review there was very comprehensive and covered more or less everything. Like world building, I thought, yeah, it was the strongest. The setting, the whole Viking kind of thing, it just felt, it felt dark. It felt like raw. It was just a very unique kind of, like, a lot of God kind of lore and like settings and stuff are like trying to follow, more magical and mystical. This just felt like, the gods they're hated in this. It's like people rose up against them and stuff. Whereas it's like in Greek mythology, for example, it's like, everybody worships the gods. This felt like a lot better, that the gods were more or less just stronger beings. And I did like the whole idea of, which we'll talk more about, the tainted people being like, descendants almost of the gods. I like that whole setup. I absolutely agree with the character I didn't really feel strongly towards any of the characters. I do think that the storylines were good, like were decent for Orca and Varg. Like I liked I loved. I'd say if I was to rank them, I would say it was Varg, Orca, and then Elvar. So I liked Varg's storyline in terms of the whole Bloodsworn, and then the unique twist at the end, which we'll get into. I thought Orca's is, although not really a unique storyline, like it's in terms of like it's been done before. Like, the whole family got massacred or abducted or whatever. But it is like really powerful story nonetheless, and it has a good story. It does feel a bit the same. There's like a lot of crossover in this in terms of what this is about, because like it's more or less both kind of a tale of vengeance. Like Varg is out to firstly find out what happened to his sister and then probably avenge her. Orca again trying to get her son back and avenge her husband at some stage. Although that's more or less a spoiler, but that happens early on enough.
Massive spoiler.
Yeah. The Elvar, I feel, like what Michael said, like I think could have been cut out of this book completely. Like I thought Elvar was really just kind of a mixture of the two stories. Like it had the strong female character, but it also was part of this war band group. So I more or less thought it was just taking parts of the other two storylines.
Yeah.
I don't think it was doing anything different or unique. Yeah, for me, wasn't really that interesting. There was some parts maybe more towards the end of that story, kind of picked up a bit, but yeah, still not great overall. But yeah, I would more or less agree with what Michael said with everything, and say, yeah, the strongest part of this is the world's building and the setting.
Thank you very much. Again, like average, I think the three of us are sort of mirroring each other's thoughts. Although interestingly, I think we sort of rank the characters slightly differently. I would agree with Michael in that I think Orca is far and away the strongest point of view. Although I much preferred Elvar's side of things to Varg's. I do think they're very similar, but I don't know. I just preferred Elvar's point of view to Varg's for some reason. There was just a stage with Varg's that I just found nothing was really happening. But I suppose you could maybe make the argument for Elvar too. But yeah, overall, like, yeah, the plot, the fighting was amazing. I think how well written the action scenes in this book are and how well voiced they are by Colin Mac. I think he did a great job bringing it to life, but I would probably again agree with Michael that sometimes the fighting is just there for fighting's sake. It doesn't actually really progress the plot all that far forward at times. It's still pretty sick when it happens, though.
Yeah.
And yeah,
they were great fight scenes. They were, yeah.
Overall, I had a good time in this book. I don't really think there's much more I can add at the moment. Well, actually, another thing I suppose would be, like you mentioned, about a lot of descriptive about what people are wearing, and something that comes up a lot is obviously thought cage as well.
Oh, that yes. word! That word is said so many times, like it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that ticks a lot of people off. I didn't mind it an awful lot, to be honest, but
the term thought cage. I like the term, but it's just so overused.
Apparently it's used in this book 69 times, which does seem a little bit excessive. But I read it's used in the sequel 70 times, so even more on the next one.
Yeah.
But apparently it's called a kenning, and it's a popular device within can't remember if it was a Viking fiction or Norse, which is, I know there's a lot of overlap with that anyway. But yeah, apparently it is a device, which again shows that John Gwynne's a massive Viking nerd and just wanted to insert as much as stuff like that in here.
The freaking skier was always mentioned as well. Like I don't know how many times they had skier.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, did you eat any skier, Michael?
I didn't, but I did do the eating challenge because I believe there is a quite a good story that I really enjoyed in this about porridge, about eating a massive quantity of porridge. I did in actual fact eat an absolute massive quantity of porridge one day. So
there we go.
There you go, sticking to the plot.
I did it. Oh, another thing I want to mention too before we go on to the spoiler review too is I really liked the twist. Obviously we covered Norse mythology, the book by Neil Gaiman, on this podcast. It was before you were here, Jason, but I don't know if you ever read or listened to that book as well. No. One of the things Neil Gaiman talks about is the apocalypse in Norse mythology, the Ragnarok, which is not only the end of the gods, but also like a new beginning. So it seems like John Gwynne took a lot of inspiration from that for this world. It's like, okay, the gods have their big apocalypse and then they're all gone. What happens next is kind of you could almost say the premise of this book is.
Yeah, pretty much is, I suppose. It's what happens after Ragnarok, really. One final thing I wanted to say, and I was actually surprised neither of you mentioned it, but two things I probably want to say is, usually I'm sort of pulling the curtain back on how we do these reviews, but usually when I'm reviewing a book, I will make notes after the fact, usually looking at a website that has already summarised the chapters for me. But unfortunately no such thing exists for this book. So thankfully I realised early on, but it just meant I had to make a absolute fuck ton of notes while trying to listen to this book, which made it a bit stressful. I found it helped me keep track of characters, which was good, although I still at times struggled because some of the names are very similar.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that neither of you actually mentioned that being an issue, because I feel like a lot of people struggle with some names just being like a letter or two off, like another name for something else, and it's just confusing things quite a lot. But hopefully I've got them.
I did read the physical text of this as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I found it, maybe that's why I found it a bit easier to follow then, because I had read that. But yeah, when I'm hosting the episodes, I will usually look online to find a summary, because what often happens is people obviously finish these books at different rates, so you always need that kind of refresher then when we're going to record the episode, because it might be a while since you actually listened to it. I usually need that to remember what's happened and on what points to touch on.
Yeah.
But so I don't envy you at all having to take notes throughout this book. That sounds like a massive pain in the arse. Like.
Yeah, I'm looking. I've got 27 pages in my notes app, summarising this book.
Yeah.
And they are just like random scribblings as I listen, so I have no idea if they are even appropriate, but we'll give it a go and see how it goes. Strap in, everyone. So the book, as we sort of mentioned, is split into 3 point of view. I'm just going to read through it as chapters rather than sticking to one character at a time. I think that would confuse things a bit too much. So the book starts off with Orca point of view. Orca is out with her husband Thorkel and her son Brecca, and they're out hunting. We get a little bit of lore from Thorkel just regarding the gods in this world. And they come across a dead body, or a couple dead bodies, I think, actually. And they believe that these bodies were killed by Vaesen, which we find out to be the monsters of this universe. After that, we sort of cut to Varg. Starts off quite frantic. He's on the run. We don't really know why yet, but he arrives at this town called Liga. And again, Varg just seems sort of desperate. We don't understand why he's so desperate yet, but he eyes up this witch, and he finds out that to speak with this witch, he has to fight this half troll called Einar. So Varg agrees to fight the half troll Einar, who is part of the Bloodsworn group. Well, we don't really find out the outcome of that, but there was definitely a scene with Varg getting his ass kicked and then choosing to bite Einar on the leg. We kick on to chapter 3. We're back in Orca's point of view, but there's not an awful lot, I would say, happens in chapter 3. I think they just sort of take the bodies of the man and woman they find and take them up to the Jarl and just essentially push to get these murders chased up. We cut back to Varg. So this is actually the fight scene now against Einar, half troll. So yeah, we kick off. Chapter 4 is the fight scene with Varg and Einar half troll. I think this is maybe the first proper bit of action we get. So we move on to chapter 4. This is actually the scene where Varg and Einar half troll fight. Quite a descriptive fight scene. Varg ends up biting Einar on the leg. We sort of then skips time a wee bit, and Varg sort of wakes up quite bloody, a bit dazed. We find out why he was on the run and what's happened. His sister was murdered, Sister Freya. She was a slave alongside him. And then Varg actually gets attacked by a group of a man called Leif. Varg had killed Leif's dad. But before Leif can kill Varg, they actually get rescued by a man called Agnar, who is he gets rescued by a Bloodsworn. Sorry, Agnar is a Elvar's person.
Agnar's the Elvar's.
See, wrong notes. He gets rescued by Einar and Svik of the Bloodsworn. So then we move on to chapter 5, and this is when we meet Elvar for the first time. So she's on a rowboat with her crew and Agnar, her captain. This crew is called the Battlegrim, and they're on the hunt for a man called Beric. They arrive at this fishing village and they attack the village in the search for this man, Beric. We sort of get introduced to some of the other characters in Elvar's story. A man called Grend, and there's also a group called Sigvat, a person called Sigvat. They chase after this man called Beric. We then come back to Orca. She just wakes up. She's back in her house. She wakes up and she notices Brecca is missing, and she's a bit unusual. There's a lot of Orca feeling a bit unusual. She goes outside and she sees Brecca. She goes outside, and she speaks to Spurt, who's a big centipede-looking creature. They notice that the gate's open, so she runs out after, searching for Brecca, searching for her son. But they find Brecca at a body of water, and Brecca's there holding a little creature, a little tenure, which we call Fessli. And Brecca is just wanting to look after Fessli, take care of him. Cut back to Elvar, sort of the aftermath of this battle in the village. Elvar, Grend and Bior sort of lead the pack, and they're hunting after this man, Beric. And they come across him at this sort of molten, sort of water pulley fire lava thingy, and they can see Berak is fighting a troll, and I've noticed now, just in my notes, I know this happens again later on, there's a very descriptive detail about this troll's swinging testicles.
Yeah, I remember that.
Definitely happens when there's another troll down the line.
I'm pretty sure he says they're like boulders or something.
I want to point that out because he definitely says about another troll down the line.
No, he doesn't.
So yeah, now there's a big battle between Berak and the troll and the battle groom, and they eventually capture Berak and they lock him up in a thrall's collar, which we sort of think is like a slave's collar. And the reason why they've captured him is Agnar says he's a Berserkild, which means that he's a god touched or tainted. It means he's a son or a descendant of one of the gods. So we think he's one of the Bear descendants. We move on to Orca. She's just obviously very worried after having Brekka run away. But we sort of get a wee bit of time of Brekka, Fessli and Spurt. And Spurt and Fessli are the two sort of Vaesen that we have. Fessli sort of promises that he owes Brekka a blood debt and he'll sort of care for them. And then some riders appear and they tell him they're summoned, saying Jarl Sigrun has returned to the town and they want everybody to come for a big meeting, big important meeting. Final wee thing, we sort of end up with Elvar. She's back in this fishing village. We hear a bit of lore about the dragon god. He sort of mentions that the dragon god's actually not dead, but that's just been trapped in a cave. Elvar doesn't believe this. We're in spoilers territory now. I've actually written in my notes, Elvar doesn't believe this, and in brackets, so this will definitely be true. So I was picking up on that foreshadowing that was happening there. And then Agnar just sort of bestows a nice wee gift to Elvar for her help in taking down the troll. And then they take off on their boat to the sea serpent, Berak and his wife and son. They're going to a town, I can't remember which town it is, but it turns out that this is actually where Elvar is from. And that's how things get left there. So that's the first sort of 9 chapters. A few each for sort of Varg, Elvar, and Orca. Anyone, any thoughts, anything they want to sort of discuss about the opening of this book?
I thought it was really strong opening. I thought it was a great opening, especially the beginning chapters with Orca, and once again the absolute brilliant descriptions within this book. We get to see how like the landscape as it's Snaka as it that her where we start with, it's kind of the snake god. The landscape is kind of
there's definitely mention of Snaka, so
just,
there is
yeah. Gives you kind of an idea of the scale that these gods were on, and just gives this kind of breathtaking visual, which I haven't really seen before in a fantasy book. So that was all fantastic. And the introduction to Orca as well, you can obviously tell immediately her and Fork will come from like some kind of military background that's heavily telegraphed within their characters. And it's very interesting to see them have settled down and everything, and it made me intrigued to know more about Orca and learn about how she'd ended up in this situation. Varg, it's a great opening for him as well, because we're already putting that immediacy of him escaping somewhere, so it already pulls you right onto his scenario. You have empathy for him, you already want him to get away from this situation, and then he interacts with the Bloodsworn, which is a very intriguing part as well, and the fight with Einar Half-Troll. It was quite compelling as well. And then we get the bite, which you talked about, the foreshadowing of the dragon. There's a bit of foreshadowing on that bite as well, to a revelation of Varg later in the book. And then the beginning of Elvar, even though I said she didn't do much for me as a character, there was still the odd exciting part within her POV, and this troll fight was probably one of the more exciting points. As you said, the great descriptions of the testicles and everything is it was a great opening. So I thought it was a very thrilling opening, and it definitely had me into this world thoroughly and enjoying these characters and wanting to know more at this stage.
Thank you. Johnny, what did you think?
Yeah, I agree. Thought the opening was quite strong. I think my only issue was some maybe you touched on earlier with like names and stuff. Obviously at this stage, you're only getting introduced to characters, and I feel this is probably the part where most confusion was at the names and stuff, and like trying to figure out who's who. And like sometimes, I might have zoned out for a second and then kind of couldn't work out which person's POV I was on just by the names alone. Like I was like, this name here is associated with this storyline. I couldn't work that out yet at this stage. So it just took maybe the first kind of third of the book to get used to that. Would be my only kind of negative about it. But yeah, I really, like I said, I probably liked Varg's story the most. And I kind of liked this whole him, like I think it starts with him like running from something. And then, yeah, the whole like, that he wants to try and get this Sephiroth. You're like made aware of his motive to the Sephiroth's power to like find out what happened, because he doesn't know how his sister died, but he wants to find out so he can avenge her. So he needs the Sephiroth's power, and that's like kind of like what leads him to get on this Bloodsworn. It just feels like just because he's trying to do this far, he just keeps getting like deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, from where he starts in terms of what he was initially setting out to do. But he just kind of keeps getting wrapped up in things. I feel like that's quite a good thing about his story, what I quite liked. I like this whole fight with Aina, like this trial to see who's like going to get hired for who's going to get to like join the Bloodsworn is like this trial, and like I like how it's revealed, although I don't know if he covered it yet, but like how he gets in because although he didn't beat Aina and he got battered, he kind of like showed that he has courage and stuff like that. I really liked that kind of aspect of a storyline too.
Yeah, the point isn't to beat him; it's just to kind of put up a fight.
Yeah, exactly. Like it kind of almost show how much of a beating you can take.
Yeah,
I suppose down the line we work out the real reason why they picked him based on the fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the whole real reason that he was picked. I like the fact that there's foreshadowing. Like again, I feel like the foreshadowing, like you mentioned there with Elvar. With the whole, she's like, this dragon doesn't exist again. I was like, well, yeah, she says she doesn't believe it, so it must be true. I kind of thought that as well.
Aye.
But the Varg thing I did not see coming at all. Like I didn't like even have like the bite is like mentioned so many times. I think Aina and Varg are talking later. Whenever Aina's kind of like giving him the cold shoulder and stuff and treating him like shit, and it's just kind of like why are you treating me like shit? And he's like, oh, because you bit me and stuff like that. So it's kind of like this comes up again and again. So it's kind of obvious that what they're doing with this, but you just don't know that until you actually get the big reveal at the end. But no, I really liked the opening for Varg, and like was interested as well about the whole sister paradox that he had going on. Whether he starts falling in with this group and stuff, but he still made this deal that he was going to find out his sister, and we'll talk more about the kind of or things that he comes up against with that paradox that he's faced. Yeah, Elvar, like Michael said, there's good things about her story, even though I think for the most part it was kind of uninteresting. I like that she has this like follower who's like just dedicated to her, but then I think as well she's also got this thing, the whole backstory about how she joined. I can't remember what you call her group.
The Battlegrim.
The Battlegrim, yeah. I like the whole backstory and like her like, relationship with her family, which I guess we'll cover here now in the next chapters. Yeah, Orca as well. Although I thought Orca's like opening story here was a bit slow. I guess I appreciated it more then because of what happens later. Like you can understand that it's like setting up this kind of like she is living in this really like nice. I pictured it as like a log cabin in the middle of the woods, kind of close enough to a civilization, but far enough away, where she's just got this. I thought the wee character, the wee centipede boy, what was his name again?
Spurt.
Spurt, yeah. I liked him, like how he just keeps wanting food or something like that. He just keeps saying he's hungry, and they like give him like a porridge, like spit on it or something. I thought that was quite funny.
Man's just starving all the time.
Yeah, like this world is like. These animals, I can't remember what the term was you said they were, but they can talk, like these monsters, these creatures. Yeah, the mason, yeah, and there's the little I can't remember any of the terms. That's what did you call the wee Vesely? What do you call? What is he again?
He's I had literally the top of my tongue there too.
Begins with T, doesn't it?
It's TH. Is a tenure.
Tenure. Because we meet the tenures later as well. I think they like attack, like a load of them attack like Elvar's group, and they're like kind of point fishes and attack them. So it's like this is like a little docile one, and there's some strange thing where they like stealing people's teeth or something like that, which I thought again is just this interesting little thing about them. I thought it's quite well set up. The whole battle of the troll as well for Elvar, like I think it's quite funny, like the testicles, because it's like what I picture is like I think they describe it's like a male troll on bull, and you're like thinking this big muscly, 3 times the size of a man. It's like it's got like horns and like tusks or whatever, and then it just like you're just thinking this big monster and all, and it's got like I think it's like a big club or whatever, and then it's got these 2 massive swinging testicles like boulders, and then all of us like I'm just taken away from the troll, and all I'm thinking is if I was fighting this thing, I would just be like, I don't care if I get clubbed to death, just don't be getting all these testicles, That's all I'd be thinking. And yeah, I think it's funny, that kind of description, but it also takes me away from the monstrous kind of description at the same time. So I don't know how I feel about that. I think it's kind of good and bad. No, overall, I really enjoyed this opening this opening portion of the book.
That's good. You can maybe argue that's even more monstrous, technically. I mean, don't know about you, but something with giant swinging testicles came at me, I'd be a bit terrified.
It makes it more scary for me for some reason, but I think it's just because if an animal attacked you in the wild and it had big swinging testicles, you wouldn't find it funny. It'd be a grotesque, kind of dark, invasive thought in your head, and that's kind of the way I interpreted it. Not necessarily as a humorous thing, but just a way to make this thing seem more grotesque and kind of more grounded.
Probably all just like full of testosterone was how I got it, like ready to mate, that sort of angry vibe as well, It was just interesting how I had it written in my notes, because I vividly remember another troll being described with swinging testicles down the line. I thought it was a good opening for all 3. I think, interestingly enough, I think Elvar probably has the strongest opening. I think Orca probably has the weakest, but I think that is the strength in Orca's, in that her opening is very much character building. I think her story does the best to build up the family dynamic and the sort of relationship between her husband and her child, and sort of hint maybe at like her past life. I always sort of got a vibe of like a past life of Orca. I mean, it's probably something I'll discuss more down the line, but I couldn't get it out of my head that Orca was just essentially like a Viking John Wick. Was how I sort of pictured her on the sort of revenge.
At times I got annoyed with her chapters because I was like, she's a bit OP, she's a bit overpowered. Then I was like, kind of told myself, no, Michael, this isn't Game of Thrones political fantasy. This is heroic fantasy with a very violent edge. You're not thinking right of thinking that she's overpowered. She's basically a Aragon, is what I told myself. She's angry Aragon, so
same vibe.
She can just mow down whoever she likes, and that's kind of, you just have to enjoy that.
Yeah, I think you have to just take it for what it is. But yeah, I thought Elvar's probably had the best start. I don't know if it was just something to do with her being like already part of like a big established crew, just out in the open sea, like they already were on the hunt for something, like it was already just like you're in the middle of the story, you're chasing after this man, you don't know why you were chasing after this man, but I think it just sort of took you straight into the action. Varg's to a sort of lesser extent. I mean, again, you start off with him, he's running, you don't know why, but I feel like his settles fairly quickly in that, like as soon as he gets to the town, he's a wee bit safer, and it's just okay, right, well now I need to join the Bloodsworn. And whereas I feel like Elvar's just those first couple of chapters, just lots of action and chasing after and just sort of setting up to capturing this man Berak. But I still, even though I think Orc is the best POV overall, I think she had the weakest, or the slowest of the starts, shall I say. I don't think it was a weak start. But so we're picking up here at chapter 10. So we're in Orca's POV. She's been summoned to this meeting with the Jarl Sigrun. They meet in this, I think it's an island, potentially, with like an oath stone. There's a lot of chat about oath stones and broken oath stones with sort of markings throughout this book. and I think this might be one of those times they mention about the Markins. Jarl Sigrun announces that they've pledged their allegiance to Queen Helga, sort of this first sort of mention of like a wider political thing going on over our heads. There's lots of sort of worry about raised taxes, war, all the rest relating to that. And then a character called Guthvar, who I believe is Jarl Sigrun's nephew. He gets berated by a gentleman called Verg, and they eventually agree to have a duel. And as part of this duel, they get to choose a second each, and Verg chooses Orca. We move on to chapter 11, Varg. There's not an awful lot, I would say, that happens here, but we just sort of get a bit of downtime with the Bloodsworn. We find out that Varg was sort of looked after being stabbed. He then sort of gets shield training from a lady called Rakia. We also get to the bit of sort of chat about his need to sort of speak with this Sepha witch and to get the help finding his sister Freya. So yeah, back to Orca, and we have the sort of fight scene between Verg and Guthvar. Verg actually defeats Guthvar and gets him to submit, but Guthvar sort of pushes him too far, slags him too much, and Verg goes to kill Guthvar, but they get stopped by this warrior thrall, this warrior slave. But then this thrall actually sort of mauls Verg to death, like literally biting him, eating him. Thorkel steps in to stop the thrall. The thrall then attacks Thorkel. Lots of drama. Verg's body is eventually removed, and I think it's sort of made out that Orca sees the warrior thrall sort of tasting Thorkel's blood off their finger during that. Chapter 13 with Varg. I'll be honest with you, I don't really have a clue what happened in this chapter. They're in the hall. So Varg and the Bloodsworn are in a hall with one of the Jarls, and there's people barge in, and there's a prince brought out from a guy from Iskadan, a guy called Sergei. But I'll be honest with you, I haven't really a clue what happens here. I don't think very much happens here, but hopefully one of you can help with that. Chapter 14, we're back to Elvar's point of view. Again, there's lots of this chat about an Oathstone. We get lots of tales about the gods, the creation of the Vaesen. I think the gods created the Vaesen. But they get the tales of the destruction from the gods, how they sort of led into Bloodborne, and how there's no Dragonborn left. We then wake to the sort of terrifying scene of Elvar and the Battlegrim being attacked by night worms. Like 1,000 little worms just sort of pull them into the soil as they slept. But they do manage to get saved. Berak manages to tear free. Grant ends up saving Elvar, I believe. On to chapter 15. Orca comes back home after Verg's death, after he was killed in the fight with Guthvar. His two sons, Lif and Mord, I believe the names are sort of planning their revenge, but I think Orca sort of tries to talk them out of it. Brekka wants to learn about swordcraft. There's a bit of chatting about death here, which I thought was a bit foreshadowing. Again, that's something I have mentioned here, a bit of foreshadowing. After that, Orca sneaks off to an ash tree where she finds the tree spirit's dead. She sort of thinks, what's happened here? There's been a lot of people here, sort of destroyed this. And then from that moment onward, she hears a lot of screaming from the sort of direction she came from, so back from her own home, as she runs off. Varg, again, chapter 16, I don't find there's an awful lot that happens here. It's just more chatting about how he wants to relive Freya's last moments, how he needs to sort of further prove himself to become Bloodsworn, and how he's just sort of given some money to get some supplies to sort of ready himself for further battles. Chapter 17 with Orca. She runs back home. She finds her steadings on fire. There's lots of dead bodies. Thorkel's quite badly injured. Breck is missing. Thorkel's last words that he sort of mutters to her is Dragonborn, or Dragonkin, maybe. She chases down part of this group, and she manages to torture a name out of one of the lads she captures, and the name she gets is Drekka. So Varg, chapter 18 with Varg. Again, we just sort of get a bit of history about Queen Helga, her sigils. Varg is out getting the sort of, as long as we shopping trip, getting the supplies. there's then a bit of a battle at the pier between this Yaomir, who I think was the person that sort of stormed into the hall beforehand. And then there's this battle, and Varg's a bit crap at this stage. Like, I think he tries to stab someone, but he still has a sword or a spear in like the leather casing. And then sort of after this, Queen Helka actually arrives. Her and her ships arrive at this pier at Liga. The final wee thing I'll say before we stop is chapter 19 then, with Vorka. She's back at the stead, after torching this information, Fessley sort of looking after Spurt, Two-Faced and sort of looking after each other to give her a bit of a history of what happened. They report that actually Thorkel changed, so Thorkel must have been attainted. It was Orca then sort of digs up this chest out of the garden. She pulls out this battle armor, which again sort of gives you this idea of what she was like in past life. She buries Thorkel, and she sort of says the kick-ass line, "I am vengeance," and sort of sets out. So that was sort of chapter 10 through 19. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. The one I sort of struggled with most out of the three, but Michael, would you like to give me your thoughts first?
One thing I really like about this book that it kind of swayed me on was, initially I was kind of like, well, with this political backdrop, would it not have better served the story to have somebody more entrenched on the political side of things to give us a bit more variability? Because I think we all felt like Elvar was a bit of a mix between the other two, and there wasn't that variance for the third POV. But I kind of turned around on that as well, because I like it now. The way I think about it is, it's like when you read a World War I or World War II account, but it's not about any of the political moving parts. It's just about the soldiers and what their experience was on the ground. So when I kind of accepted that was what the story was doing, you're more with these like mercenary groups, and the bigger, wider political ramifications are just things that happen around them. I kind of enjoyed it, taking that aspect of things. Quite liked Varg's training scenes. I thought they were funny, him getting messed around with the shield and everything. The Varg fight was completely gruesome. It's the way it ended. The attack from the thrall and the way that's described, as you said, basically mauling him and licking the blood and everything. It's such a powerful image and so horrible, but really cool as well at the same time. Elvar, we have a lot of stuff is given, a lot of world building stuff here. I don't think this book really ever info dumps that much. All the world building is pretty skillfully done, but I think in some of these chapters it does verge on a little bit of info dumping because there's not much exciting happening. Same in some of Varg's chapters in this section. There's a bit of info dumping being done, but not really egregiously, just wee bits and pieces here. But I wish these slower scenes, I like slower scenes. I think they're a good opportunity to give a lot of character work. So I wish there had been a bit more character work in those slower scenes too. Because again, we have Orca who gets her big setup, her big character motivation is established then when her son is taken, and then we have, as you said, the badass line and everything of knowing how she's going to react to this. But I feel like that hits home harder than the other two because we get their motivations, Elvar and Varg. Well, Elvar's, as it kind of explained later in the story, it's already established at this point, but we get a bit more, we get like a bit of a twist on who she really is and everything. And Varg's, we know, has motivation right from the start, whereas Orca, it's a bit more of a patient story. It's you have her regular family life. So that's more adheres to like traditional story structure. You see her regular life, and then the motivation comes a bit after that, which is why I think her character felt a bit stronger going on. It's just my opinion anyway. I think she had that background character work done a bit better at the start of the story, and I thought this probably would have been a good opportunity to build Varg and Elvar a bit more, but I still quite enjoyed Varg's chapters. I was a bit bored in Elvar's chapters, to be honest, but yeah, overall I thought it was quite a good section, a bit mixed here and there, but mostly good.
Yeah. Johnny?
Agreed, definitely with what Michael's last point there. Like Elvar, I thought these kind of chapters were very boring for her. Like I think more towards the end of her story is where most of the interesting stuff.
Well, what I would probably say is I think in the chapters I read out there, I think Elvar actually only had one chapter. I think the boring chapters you both sort of mentioned might be more what's coming up potentially, but
possible is is this not the stuff of like her father and all that kind of stuff?
No, that's after.
Oh, okay. Oh well, sorry, that's what I was thinking of. Well, just take this what I just said there and insert it there. The Varg, like I've said, is my kind of favorite stuff. I do like a kind of like almost like a training montage setup. Definitely like movies, but
I like that too.
Yeah, I think it kind of worked here, and I liked like his how ignorant he is to the world, just because he's like he was a slave and he just doesn't know much, and kind of like him finding out a lot of stuff here is just quite interesting, because obviously as they explain it, we're finding out about it too.
Yeah, he's a good like audience surrogate.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's always a good way to explain things. I think we have had that in a few of the other books we've done before, and I've mentioned that. But yeah, I just do think that really works, and I do like when people use that method to explain things. As for Orca, I think her stuff gets very interesting here. This is her main storyline is now about hunting down for the revenge of her husband, and then actually trying to find her child. It's just kind of she just gets a bit more from this point onwards. Her character gets more and more psychotic almost, just because of just this desperation to find her son. I like then again, I don't think you've covered this part yet, but how she interacts with the two children of the guy that was like brutally killed in that by the thrall. I do like all that kind of stuff that's coming up with them. So I just think from this point onwards, her story just really starts to get a lot more interesting for me. But them two I did really enjoy there. Like you said, Elvar didn't have too much here, but I think the coming up chapters for Elvar's weren't that interesting. But I did really start enjoying Orca's stuff here, and I thought Varg's was just building again on what I already enjoyed from him at the start.
Yeah, thank you. I think it was probably obvious from how I even read the chapters, but there's definitely I think 2 chapters of Varg's there where I really struggled to even sort of like what is going on here. Has anything actually happened? I think there was a shopping trip in one of them. I did struggle with Varg's during this stage, but as you sort of said, this is Orca. This is her John Wick moment. Puppy's just been killed. She's suited up. She's pulling up her old black suit. She's out in the road on vengeance. Sorry. Yeah, I thought things probably slowed a bit in some chapters. I mean, I don't think Elvar. I think she had 1 chapter, and I think it was just a bit of info dumping about the lore and the gods and everything. But I find Varg's probably slowed down a fair bit, whereas Orca's picked up in this section. But yeah, not really much more to add, really, apart from that. So we move on to the 3rd section of this book. So we're back in with Varg here. We get to meet Queen Helga for the first time. She's dressed in all gold. Her son's dressed in all silver. I believe her son's called Hakon. We also get to sort of meet the Queen's Wolf Guard, which are like her sort of bodyguard, who are all these wolf bloodsworn sort of people. The bloodsworn then set off to sort of help Queen Helga's people who are being attacked by Face, and I think that was a sort of plot line there that was happening between them and the Jarl. Move on to chapter 21. We move on to Elvar's point of view as she arrives at Snapkivik, which is her hometown, where Jarl Stur is in charge. There seems to be some sort of giant floating head sort of thing, which seems like a bit omnipotent. And they confirm that Brekka is in fact a Berserkir, and Agnar and the Battlegroom get paid for Brekka. We find out that Jarl Stur is like, he has as much like Queen Helga has like a wolf guard, he has like a sort of thrall guard of the Berserkir people, the bear people. And then the sort of part of the motivations for Elvar get revealed here, and that we find out that she is actually the Jarl's daughter, and that's how that chapter finishes. We then move on to chapter 22, Orcas. I think she works out that the thrall, the warrior thrall, that sort of, she works out that that's how they find Thorkel. They find out that this thrall tasted his blood must have been able to tell that he was tainted somehow. So we find out this thrall is called Fafhrey, and Orca sneaks in, and we find out that the master of Fafhrey is Hakon, Queen Helga's son. There's a bit of a fight scene between Orca and Fafhrey. Fafhrey gets killed. Orca ends up actually injuring Jarl Sigrun as well during this, and she gets chased away and flees on a rowboat with the two sons of Verg. Chapter 23 of Elvar, just a lot of sort of chat between her and her family. The dad, the Jarl, and her brother all sort of try to convince her to stay, but she's sort of essentially saying she's happy with Grand and their sort of new family in the Battleground. Orca, chapter 24, she's on the run on this boat with Lifton Moore. There's lots of chat about them getting their revenge for their dad, Verk. I think Orca just sort of tries talking them out of it for now. She's aware now that Jarl Sigrun is chasing after them. Elvar, chapter 25, she informs Agnar that the dad's sort of offered her to lead this army of Drakkar. She discusses this with this giant floating head whose name is Thrum. She's just sort of having a bit of a dilemma about whether to leave the Battlegrim or to rejoin her family. Varg, chapter 26, just a lot more training for Varg now. Some endurance trials, but we find out he sort of gets cheated by Einar. Straight after that, he's more sword and shield training with Rakia. So then there's just a bit of sort of chat between a character here I've written called Skulk, but I'm not entirely sure that's his name. But anyways, there's a character called Skulk, and he's just sort of slabbering at Vol, and Glornir gets quite annoyed at him for that. As to why, we don't really know yet, because as far as we're aware, Vol is a thrall at this stage. And that's revealed that they're off to the Boneback Mountains. Chapter 27 of Elvar, there's a big fight scene in Snakovic now. The boy is taken, so Beric's son, or the sort of wife of Beric, who is still with them, they're called Usthar. So their son is taken, and they are taken by Ilska, who we get a lot of description of. I think she's the black-haired lady. She's given out to be sort of an evil vibe. Usthar sort of pleads with Agnar. She sort of says they're after Usthar because she knows the way to Oscadreth, which we sort of find out is like the resting place of the gods, where the gods used to live and where the gods are all sort of dead. Chapter 28, Vorka. She's on the boat to gain Lifton Mord. And Mord gets dragged underwater by some sort of green man, Vaesen type of creature. But Orca jumps in to save him. Elvar, chapter 29. Lots of discussion with Usthar of whether or not to chase after Ilska. Usthar feels when she was at the troll, at the sort of scene of the troll, she threw a book into the sort of lava, which Elvar did see her do at the time. And she reports this is that was the sort of path to Uskadrif, which is this sort of mentioned the god's resting place, so this god graveyard. Usthar makes them swear a blood pact to her that if she takes them to Uskadrif, they will help her get her son back from Ilska. And we'll finish there. So a lot more of Elvar and Orca this time, and not an awful lot of Varg. Michael, have you any thoughts about the sort of third section of the book, the sort of last 10 chapters or
quite
so?
like again, Orca's point of view chapters keep going on this kind of very linear progression towards her path of revenge. And obviously we have the sons of Verg here who play bigger roles on this. And I think as secondary characters, they're okay. You know, they don't bring immensely much to the story, but they're a good kind of thing to bounce off Orca, who is an extremely competent person that we're following, and here are two people who are a wee bit out of their depth, so it was a good way to kind of bring something different to within her scenes. The stuff, even though we don't get much of Argo, the stuff that we get with the Bloodsworn, I like it just for small reasons, not even big plot reasons. I quite like. I thought their dialogue and their exchanges between each other were probably the most organic and well done within the book. Then going on to Elvar, well, before that, I thought, again, great descriptions of Queen Helga, the Wolf Garden, everything. There's small, subtle little bits of world building dispensed here and there. Just great stuff that's done throughout this book fantastically well. Then going on to Elvar, I'm trying to think. I think the part of the issue I think I have with Elvar is I just did not really buy her motivation of wanting to go with this gang of mercenaries for glory away from the Jarl. It didn't feel convincing to me, but I know that it's not common now that people really do things for glory. It's more, well, I suppose you could say fame as kind of glory, but it's more of an ancient Greek, an ancient antiquity times, something that would really drive people the path to glory. So it is realistic, but it never connected me to Elvar or seemed genuine to me the way that Orcas did, or the way that Vargs did. But it starts to get an issue for me with Varg as well. Maybe not now, but soon in this story. The fact nothing really changed or twists with what he wants. It just kind of stays the same. So it feels a bit one note in that regard. But yeah, that's what I think maybe my issue with Elvar is. I just didn't buy, especially this part where it's really revealed what her motivation is really, and it just didn't feel authentic to me the way the other two ones did. And maybe that's where my sticking point is with her.
It's fair. I can get that. Johnny?
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I think Orca's stuff is continuing, as Michael said, like in a linear kind of progression. It just feels like it's building and building. And like I said, you can feel like the rage. It's almost like the rage in her character. You can feel what she's feeling building as well. I did really I think part of the best parts in her like story and what's to come is kind of like the interactions with the brothers. Like I like the whole her training them and stuff like that, but it's kind of like Michael said, it's kind of like a good offset for her, because like they're like these two, they kind of want to achieve a similar goal, but they're a different part. Like they're not as well trained as her and stuff, but they still want to achieve that goal. And I think she's like also kind of, although she wants to have her own vengeance and rescue her son, she obviously was at that thing where their father was killed and feels like he was wrongly done, stuff like that. So I think she's kind of invested as well. But yeah, I like the whole training stuff with them, and then what's to come as well that we'll get more into with them. I feel like those interactions were the best parts of her story. Like everything else was kind of just, as you would kind of expect, with a vengeance story about coming after somebody, but you're trying not to be. It's almost like, she's blinded with hatred and wanting to get this revenge, but they keep her in check on that side, but she also does the same thing for them because they're blinded by their own hatred. Like you said, for Elvar, I said, like, a lot of the stuff here, I think when she's back at her, her with her father and her brothers and stuff, although I know it's trying to maybe set this like backstory of why she joins, the group.
The battle.
Call them again.
Battlegrim.
I keep forgetting it, right?
Battlegrim.
The Battlegrim. I keep thinking the Bloodsworn, but I'm like, no, that's the other guy. The Battlegrim.
It's a common complaint, is that they're two mercenary groups.
Yeah.
It's like, fair enough,
Yeah, I keep thinking, the other way about. But yeah, I think what Michael said there, although that wasn't what I was thinking at the time, I completely agree with it. Like, it didn't feel like genuine, like her reasons for being there. Like, it almost doesn't seem like it was working. I know she was wanting this glory, and maybe because she wasn't going to find it at home because her father didn't see that in her and stuff. But then, like, there's the whole conflict then that arises that he's like going to give her everything she wants. Like, she's going to give her the army and all that kind of thing, all that stuff. I don't know. It just didn't really feel that entertaining or that engaging for me. It was just all kind of. It was almost like political stuff, which sometimes can be quite interesting, but I feel like in this case it just wasn't. No, I do like the what's the girl that's going to show them the path to Oscartooth. What do you call her again?
She's just Istvar.
Yeah, I actually quite liked that. The whole scene with trying to convince them to take the blood oath and stuff. I don't. You probably haven't got that part yet, but like I feel like that part. Yeah, we have. Okay, well, the whole blood oath and stuff, I feel like was quite interesting. It's always like, you know, the comparisons, like, you know, the unbreakable bonds that you get in Harry Potter.
Unbreakable vow, is it?
Yeah, where they're like connected, and if, you know, you break it, you know, something bad's going to happen, you're going to die or whatever. I kind of like that power they bring in that, because I feel like when you have like a story that's, you know, two people trying to make an agreement, it's like this one girl making an agreement with a whole group. It's like, you're always thinking then, someone's going to, you know, fuck someone over. But then with this here, it's like, you know, they can't, and it's like, you know, they have to try their best to fulfill this. I almost kind of like that better, because like the whole fuck you over story, just for me, is just a bit, just doesn't feel, it almost annoys me, you know, it doesn't sit quite right with me. I'm just like, okay, why are they going to mess this girl about? It's like, you know, she's done nothing wrong or whatever. I just like the way it's done here. But yeah, the stuff with the father and all, like this, the big head and all, I don't really understand where that came out of. Like, it didn't really seem like it fitted in with anything. It actually took me a while to realise what they were describing, or what he was. So I kind of struggled a bit with the description in the book. But yeah, I think there's little glimmers here and there in her story that I do enjoy. But yeah, overall, I still find her story not that engaging. But yeah, I kind of think for the Orca's part, you know, it kind of pulled this whole section of the book up for me.
Great, thank you, Johnny. I think for me, in this section, like it's apparent that Orca is becoming like the standout character. Well, at least probably for me and Michael, as you say, you're Varg is actually your favourite, Johnny. But I find this is where she just really starts to shine, just the sort of dynamic between her, Liv, and more, and just this sort of fleeing from the battle, and just even like the nice sort of chilled times on the rowboat. I felt it was all quite nice. I felt Elvar's story stuttered a bit. I do find this section of her back in Snapovik with her family was a bit of a struggle, those sort of few chapters, although I do feel like we sort of reached the turning point again with the sort of capture of Isfar's son, Isfar and Beric's son, and the sort of blood oath, and this sort of reveal that Isfar can take them to Oskadrift, to this god graveyard. You know, this suddenly we're getting a lot more, higher stakes, I suppose. Varg, I mean, he has sort of quiet sort of section in this sort of middle part. We just get a bit more about what's the sort of dynamics like in his camp in the Bloodsworn. And we sort of say, I've written here Skulk, but I have a feeling the name might be different. But we sort of see the dynamic between Glornir and Skulk and Vol, and just between Varg himself and some of the Bloodsworn. But I thought all very good section. I think still building on all the right things.
If I could just bring up, like, I think what I really liked about, like, you know, the battle grim, and, you know, Gare making this deal, you know, the way she was kind of like she talking to the leader of the battle grim and like taunting him about, like, it's like, what do you like believe in, and what do you worship or whatever, and it's like she's trying to convince him to go there because like there's all his riches and all. It's like, oh, he, you know, is bows down to riches or whatever, and it's like taunting him or like trying to use reverse psychology on him or whatever. I thought that was quite clever, but also quite funny.
Yeah, she's sort of like, what's your god? Is it money and fame or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, she knew what to say. No, I feel like maybe apart from Elvar, but we're all sort of in agreement.
It's a shame that Stephen has missed this episode, because he's obviously the one who disagrees. Like, well, he's the most negative. Would have been interesting to see if we could get a bit of a fight, but he will be there on our...
Yeah. We might have talked about it a wee bit. He will be appearing on our summer, when we review all the books again on our end of year episode. So if anybody does want to hear, maybe we can spark a fight with Stephen on that when we go over this book again. Yeah, I think it would be interesting. It's a shame we're missing his point of view, but I'm also sort of glad.
It's been very civilized.
My pick. It's a bit nicer reviewing a book when it's just like everybody's like, yeah, this is all pretty good. When he sent me his review earlier, I was like, fucking hell. Actually upset me a wee bit, like.
No, that's how I felt when I did Mistborn.
I know you didn't write the book, but you take it as a personal attack on you for choosing it.
Yep.
And it was such a random pick. You know, it wasn't like a book I'd ever actually had any experience with, but I just wanted everybody to have a good time.
Every now and then I remember something I said about The Shining, and I'd be like, why the fuck didn't I say this or that? You know?
In the shower, you're having arguments with him.
Yeah.
We're calling you out, Stephen. We're not happy.
He's not here to defend himself, so we're taking it out on him.
And we're keeping it all in.
Yep.
No editing. Right, I'll pick back up here. Again, for chapter 30, for Varg, I have not written very much here. But essentially, we're picking back up. Varg is continuing to march to the Boneback Mountains. Back to Orca. She's helping to train the brothers in a bit of fighting. We sort of learn that they have rode about 15 or so days since this scrap with the thrall in Yarsigren. And they dock at this sort of big fortress. But as they sort of dock up, these massive big Draka, which are like the big boats, they appear. And lots of these wolf gods, tainted people descend. And then we see this person again in this golden armour. We find out that this is Queen Helga's fortress. And it's a place called Dar. And Orca sort of says to the brothers, like, you stay here, I'm here now. You just go do your own thing. Back to Elvar. She reports we're now about 12 days or so since they made this blood pact. They've sailed quite a far distance. She reports that when they were fighting the Raven Feeders, which I believe is Ilska's sort of band, war band, she thinks she's seen the wee boy turning tainted. And they sort of just inform the rest of the battle groom about their journey and what the plan is, because only a select few had actually sworn the blood of. And then Beor and Elvar have a wee smooch. Back to Orca, she's sort of just wandering about these taverns, trying to get a bit of information on Draka, and then the 11th inn, she sees this burnt man as she follows him into an inn called the Dead Dringa. She sort of goes through and she sort of sees all these children chained up and getting sort of taken into boats. She helps to free these kids, and she sort of asks the kids, like, do you know this man called Dreka? And they all sort of point and say, like, he's in this inn. Move on to chapter 34. This is what Michael sort of mentioned earlier, but we're getting this story from Svik about the troll, and how essentially it's almost like an eating competition between him and this troll. But it turns out that he was actually just sort of like filling up his hemp sack full of porridge, and the story sort of goes that like he's eating, and the troll's like, how are you managing this? And then he sort of stabs himself in the stomach, but he actually stabs himself in his hemp sack, and all the porridge would slide out, and then he keeps eating, and the troll's like, oh my god. And then the troll eventually gets full, and he decides, oh, I'll just do what you did so I don't lose this challenge, and he just stabs himself in the guts and rips himself open and just bleeds out. And it's just a bit mad. Chapter 35, we're back to Orca's point of view here. She barges into this Dead Drenga inn. She actually sees Queen Helga's son, Hakon. There's quite a big fight in this inn. Hakon sort of escapes and he comes back with more Drengas, and Orca gets outnumbered, but she gets saved by the two kids, Lif and Mord. They come and save her. Chapter 36, we're back with Varg, and we're sort of chatting to this man, Skulk, again. So it was Skulk, I had the name right. Didn't know why I thought that was wrong. And Skulk reports that he can do an akal, which is the word for the sort of ritual, I believe, that he can sort of help find out Freya's last moments. They sort of wander on through this forest, and they come across all these dead bodies hanging from the trees, lots of different ruins. And I think one of the characters actually recognises one of them, but I'm not entirely sure again who that was. On to chapter 37. The two lads sort of report that they came back to rescue Orca as they seen Sigrid also arrived by boat. They sort of hang about in Dal for another few days, and they tail this burned man again, and they use Mord as bait. And the burned man tries to attack Mord, but they actually stop him and capture the burned man. And turn out he's a ratkin, and he's called Skeffel. And they torture him for some information. It's a bit grim, this bit. But he reports his character Dreka is taking children to the Grimholt Road, and that Hakon, Queen Helga's son, is somehow involved. And then Orca just sort of kills Skeffel, put him out of his misery. I think I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there for now. So, have you any thoughts about the last sort of few chapters there?
Well, when you speak, Jason, just to avoid interrupting you, usually I take some notes while you're speaking. One of my very first note is Jason hates Varg, and hate has 4 A's in it.
I don't actually hate Varg. I just found a few of his chapters I really struggled to actually find anything meaningful to write down, which in turn has led to me not writing very much and now not having many notes. Like,
doing this review has made me realise too, that's probably a big what reason I just to keep harping on about this but don't like Elvar, because I'm really struggling every section to be like, how did I feel about her chapters, because I just didn't feel much, you know. Orca stuff is great, especially this part. Her espionage of seeking out everything, going into the inn, the fight within the inn is just absolutely great. You said the 2 lads torturing the tainted guy was grim, but I love that stuff in fantasy books too. I love when it gets really dark and horrible at times. And
I still loved it, like just grim.
Yeah, and I absolutely love the troll story. That was just great to me. I thought it was such a good story within the story. If this was, we were just rating the troll story in isolation, I would be 100% giving that 5 stars. But I thought it was really good. Yeah, and it just again probably part of what I really like about Varg's chapter 2. I do like the minor characters in Varg's story. I think Svik is a really good character. I think Einar is a good character. You know, I like the Bloodsworn. It's not so much Varg himself. While I do think he's an okay character, like I think the reason I find his chapters entertaining is the camaraderie of the entire group, which doesn't feel as present for me in Elvar's chapters for some reason.
Yeah, I have to absolutely agree there with what you just said, because I feel that too. Like, it feels like the Battlegrim are a lot more serious, where the Bloodsworn are just, they feel like a brotherhood. It's like brothers. The Battlegrim are just like, yeah, they're just like out there to get riches or glory or whatever like that. We find out why obviously the Bloodsworn are like that, because of what their links them in a minute. But I guess I'll move on with my part. Yeah, the troll story is just fantastic. I think probably my favorite part of the whole book. I think it's just brilliant, because like, as in the whole reason he tells the story is because it's like, why does he carry around a bit of cheese with him all the time or something? That's like, because it started with him squeezing that, and the troll thought it was a rock, and he was able to just crush a rock in his bare hand. So like, the whole story is just quite, far-fetched, and it's like, how the hell did he get away with this? And then it's like, he's carrying around this cheese now forever, because he's like, I could definitely get away with this again. I just think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
I think it was just an absolute brilliant story. And like, I like the way it's kind of like, told like a campfire story as well. And like, you get like scenes where it cuts back to them telling the story. And it's just like, your boy Aina Half Troll's just like, I love this part and all like that and stuff. And I love the way you tell it and all. I just think it was quite funny. So yeah, absolutely love that stuff. And I think that's, again, what you said, Michael, again, about how they are so like close-knit. That's, and like how there's a lot more camaraderie between them is just what I really liked about it. It just was more down to earth, their stuff. Whereas Elvar's just was just boring. Like, I don't really, it just wasn't really memorable and just didn't really make me feel anything. The Bloodsworn feels like a group I'd want to be part of, do you know what I mean? Whereas I wouldn't really want to be a part of the Battlegrim, put it that way. Yeah, the Orca stuff, I mentioned before that I really like the stuff with the brothers, and like the whole like torture stuff I think is brilliant, because it kind of gives you a sense, of firstly what a badass like, Orca is, but also kind of like, she will do absolutely anything. Like, I think that's the good bit in that is whenever she like says, to the person they're torturing, tell me this and I'll put you, out of your, or like, I can't remember the way she phrased it, but it's almost as if like she'll let him live, is what the way the 2 brothers, it's like, because they like question her after she kills him, after he tells her what she wants, she like kills him, and then they're like, is it like, I'll let you up for free from your misery or something like that. It's just the way she says it. And it's just set you free, isn't it? I'll set
something like that.
Yes, set you free, and like obviously the brothers interpret that, and obviously that's what the way you're supposed to is that she'll actually let him go, but she means set him free from, because he has like this rats thing, isn't he? Like he's whatever family he's part of. So it's just kind of like, you know, death is better for you than, you know, being a slave and being this grotesque being or whatever. So yeah, I just think she's just every kind of chapter of her, she just gets more and more badass and kind of almost scary. Like, you know, you just wouldn't mess with her, and it's kind of like, you know, she's just losing the plot. But yeah, I really kind of enjoyed this stuff, and I think the stuff with Orca is really building here. Elvar's again quite boring, and yeah, Varg is getting it's. I think I liked Varg's stuff too because of the twist at the end. Like, I just kind of really, you know, that's what you remember. So I can't wait to get to that part.
Yeah,
Get to the end already.
Hurry up, Jason. Leave France.
I agree with Jonathan too.
I'm doing my best.
Like, he doesn't use the word relentless, but that's the word I would describe like Orca as, is relentless. And I think a great part of that is it's never like there's never two characters around giving exposition saying Orca's so relentless. It's just shown, it's just implied, and you can just see it through the actions. This mountain, these mountain actions going on top of each other. It's just great. You really feel it throughout the story that her character is continually delving deeper into something.
Yeah, she says non-stop. She has probably the best motivations. She probably takes you mostly into sort of political backdrop about this massive conspiracy ongoing with these captured kids. Although I would say, I think it was maybe the last section, but there's an interesting wee section where Elvar sort of mentions that she mentions the sun turning, that it was tainted before he was captured, which sort of maybe hints towards the sort of reason why all these kids are getting captured. That there's maybe not just random capturing, it's maybe actually as well just because they are tainted children as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, Orca just continues her march on as being the best point of view in this book. As I sort of said, I clearly did struggle for a section there of Varg's, but I do find with a troll story, that was one of the best chapters in the book. It was like a standalone chapter almost, but it was just great storytelling. We sort of get a bit more the sort of skulk character, and he's sort of wanting to do dodgy dealings sort of behind the Bloodsworn's back a wee bit here. But yeah, I thought it was all quite good. But I mean, yeah, Orca is again just standout performance for all of it. Elvar we didn't get an awful lot of in that wee section, but just her and Bjor having a wee smooch at one stage. Probably about it. Almost at your bet, Johnny, don't worry. Might be the last bit though. So, picking this back up, we start off in quite into an Elvar chapter. She sort of mentions about how like they haven't really come across many Vaesen, which they find a bit weird because this sort of section of the world they expected to be a lot more Vaesen. Although they have come across a big group of dead elk, and they're sort of wondering what could have possibly killed them. They sort of arrive to this bridge that will take them to Oscodref. And while they're there, all these hands start crawling out of the ground, all these sort of tenures, the sort of teeth-stealing Vaesen. And there's about 40 or 50 of them. During this scene, there's just a lot of action, obviously, but there's a sort of mention of Grant just sticking to his blood oath to Elvar, and actually he's more interested in keeping her safe, whilst he's being sort of ripped to shreds at the same time. He's not even thinking about himself, he's sort of more keeping Elvar safe. But she actually ends up getting saved by Bjor, who it turns out is actually a Berserkir, I believe. I think it was sort of mentioned that he was tainted, a bear tainted. And then after that, they cross the bridge over to Oscodref. We come round to Varg. He's sort of still reeling a wee bit from all these sort of flayed, skinned carcasses all hanging from the trees with all these runes on them. We sort of have a bit of a conversation between Varg and Torvik, who I actually don't think I've mentioned yet, but Torvik also joined with the Bloodsworn at the same time as Varg, so they've actually sort of been traveling with each other. Torvik sort of offers Varg, he's like, once this is all done, I'll help you find Freya's murderers. And we just get a bit of an overall idea of more tension just bubbling in the camp. Things are just sort of underneath the surface there a wee bit. Moving back to Orca. Mord reports something about Orca growling at one stage. They're on their way, heading north, and they come across this farm, but Orca sort of stops herself. She has a sort of uneasy feeling. Sort of mentioned earlier, there's a lot of this Orca feeling uneasy at times, and it turns out that it's because Guthvar and his men, so Yar Sigrun's nephew, are all at this farm, and they chase Orca and Lif and Mord. They chase them north from horseback up through the Boneback Mountains, but they manage to escape and continue riding north to the Boneback Mountains to find Dreka. Varg chapter then, so him and Einar seem to finally make up about almost 40 chapters later. Einar finally forgives him for biting him on the leg. So even though they're sort of becoming more friendly, there's still just lots of this tension bubbling underneath the surface between the rest of the group. And then we come across this sort of another group of mercenaries, and they have this sort of chained up troll, and it sort of leaves it there that they're going to sort of go down and attack this group. Back to Elvar. So after the 10-year attack, Gren is quite badly injured. Some of the characters are sort of missing their teeth, but Gren sort of thankfully comes around, essentially just like, you didn't think that would be the end of me, did you? Absolutely grand. Bit of chill time for them, and then I think it's just sort of relaxing, having a wee bit of chat around the sort of fireplace between the Battlegrin. And at the end of this, then Elvar again and Bjor end up kissing. I think they might do a bit more than kissing, potentially. I think she and Bjor sort of share a bed that evening. Back to Varg. So we now get this fight, this Skraelings fight. So this sort of group of people of the Troll between Varg and the Bloodsworn. There's a lot of action in this chapter. And we get lots of discussion around Varg's red mist, which I've described here as basically Varg going Kaioken. The Troll then comes out along with some more warriors, and this grey bearded man with this big long yellow sword. During this fight, Vol, the thrall, ends up actually protecting Glornir with blood magic, as there are several witches we mentioned. Varg then finally sort of gives in to this red mist, so he's now sort of, this is just what I've written in my notes, he now goes Super Saiyan, releases the pit hound in his soul, and he attacks and he kills this bearded man. And during this, it's also mentioned that he hears a wolf. But as Varg kills this man, he also ends up getting sort of cut by this big bone sword that the man was carrying. We move back to Elvar. She's sleeping with Bjor now after this. Gren's not happy about it. It was giving me sort of Game of Thrones vibes between Daenerys and
Darren Harris and Jorah.
Jorah, yeah, it was the sort of vibes I was getting from Grend in Elvar in this stage. Actually, it was Daenerys and Jorah. We just get a wee bit of background into Bjor's scars and whatnot, and they arrive. They're almost at Uskadref now, and Istvar sort of mentions that these god bones are going to bring war. There's going to be issues here. There was sort of foreshadowing earlier with a blood oath, before the blood oath, that like Istvar said like nothing good's going to come from going to Uskadref. And then finally, Varg. We're in the sort of catacombs after this big battle. Svik, Einar, Reiki, they're all quite proud of him. They sort of think that this sword that the man was carrying was like actually a talon of the dead god of the eagle god. During this, then Vol sort of finally is like, yeah, I'll speak with Glornir. I'll do this akil for you so you can see your sister's last moments. But just as that happens, Skulk ends up killing Torvik, and then he sort of says to Varg, he's like, join him, I'll help you find your sister, I'll do this for you. Varg initially says he will, but then he ends up sort of breaking free and Skulk knocks him out, and then that's sort of how things end with that. So we think Vol's actually been kidnapped at that stage. So I think I'll leave it there before I get on to the final few chapters there. So anything anyone would like to add, Michael? How did you sort of find those sort of chapters?
I think previous couple of sections that you covered there, apart from Orca scenes, maybe it was dragging on a bit. The plot, that was really the point, probably the point I was referring to most when at the start when I said the plot kind of doesn't move the needle that much. I would say the needle moved very little in the previous couple of sections you went through. That section there, you can feel it amping up a lot more. And John Gwynne, who's so good at his action scenes, includes a lot more action here, and it does when the book is at its absolute best. The Elvar scenes, even though I've beat on the bush the whole time about Elvar, there are really good scenes here with the teeth stealing Vason and the Bjor's parts where he confesses he's bear tainted, and even their love interest. I thought that was pretty. It was okay. It was entertaining enough, and I even enjoyed them having a chill out scene after that. I quite enjoyed that chapter as well. And then the Varg, the Skrelling fight with the Bloodsworn and all that was again another fantastic action scene, and obviously hinting at something that we're about to learn in the story, with him hearing the wolf, and then the scenes in the catacombs as well, really good as well. So I think the story definitely amped up a lot here. You can feel it building towards something, and it's kind of regained its pace here, I would say.
Johnny, we're almost at the part. Well, we're nearly there. But what did you think of these sections sort of leading up to the end?
Yeah, I think like at least one good thing I have to say about Elvar, this kind of stuff with the fight with the 10-year coming up on the ground, very kind of zombie, almost kind of felt like, I actually just watched, because our last book there, about the last witch, about the Witcher, there's a scene in like the TV show where like the ghouls come up from the ground and stuff, their hands come out of the ground. It's very kind of classic, zombie or undead kind of raising thing. So I like that. And then, you get about obviously this is a Viking kind of thing, so you get about a shield wall action with the Battlegram. Can't have a Viking tale without some shield wall. I think there's a shield wall beforehand, or like they do it again, but like I think this one's kind of like, good. And yeah, like the whole, I was getting the Jorah vibes with, your man coming back to save her, Elvar, and, he's getting ripped to bits. It's that scene in Game of Thrones, I won't say, but, like in the last season, more or less a summer kind of thing happens. But yeah, I thought this kind of stuff was good, very actiony, which I feel we haven't got yet too much with Elvar's story. So, at least something positive there on that side. And I liked how this kind of happened just, right at the entrance of this, or like, isn't it right before the bridge to Oscartreff? I liked how it was kind of like this final hurdle. But yeah, moving on to Varg's kind of stuff. Like, I don't even feel like I could even guess what was going on at this stage. I think it's obvious to me now that I know what happens, but like at the time, I was not even thinking anywhere near this. Like, I wasn't even getting this foreshadowing. But maybe that was just me. But yeah, I like the way it was done in terms of like, I think it's like the leader of the Bloodsworn is like, in trouble, and like their whole groups, they've bitten off more than they can chew with this. I think they're like, and they're attacking that other group, and they kind of don't. I think they think that they're going to just easily defeat them because they like outnumber them or whatever. But then this guy coming in with the bone sword and whatever has, changed the game. I thought it was a good kind of way for, this situation in which they're losing, and then he just kind of like, goes full Super Saiyan or whatever he said and just ends up tearing shreds. I thought that was quite good. I really enjoyed that. Thought it was quite actiony, quite entertaining. But no, yeah, I really liked, I felt the book was really picking up here too. It was just the pace of the book, which we'll kind of discuss now in this final section in terms of how it finishes. But I feel like this was just building and building throughout, like the whole book, and it just, maybe I will just mention it just because of the way I brought this point up, but like I feel like, this book was always like, this was part of a trilogy. This is not a standalone book. Like even though, you say Harry Potter, you have each book, I feel Harry Potter can stand alone. I feel like this book has just been building and building, and then it's like, I find out what happens in the next book, so you need to read the next book. There was no like, the story doesn't just end satisfying, like you need to read the next one. So it's not I don't feel it's a standalone book, which can be good, but the only thing is I don't think I'll read the second book anytime soon. not that I didn't enjoy this book or anything, it's just, I didn't enjoy it enough to continue on right now. And I feel like you kind of need to be doing that. Like, I think I'll forget a lot of this. I suppose I could probably re-listen to this episode of our podcast and kind of get a gist for it, but in terms of this being a kind of coming towards a climax, I thought that this part was good.
Thank you, Johnny. Yeah, I would agree. I think this section's just really building up to the big finale. Now, I felt there were some great action scenes, as you both sort of mentioned. Like, I think, Johnny, as you said, like the Elvar scene at the bridge with the 10-year fight, all very good. Both of you sort of mentioned about the Varg fight scene with the Skrellings. Again, I thought that was one of the highlights. I think Varg's chapters really pick up at the end for a man who was a bit of a Varg hater in the midsection, but I think his chapters really ramp up. I think they sort of build the tension quite well in the group, which is revealed to sort of come out with Skulk sort of killing Torvik and capturing Vol. I think it was also sort of mentioned, I don't think I mentioned it, but they sort of think that the man the Varg killed was actually a dragon kin. I keep writing Dragonborn. Sort of dragon gear. They sort of mentioned about these red eyes. So it's sort of the dragon kin are still alive in this world. Just very rare, clearly. I don't really think we didn't really have much of Orca here, although one thing I did find interesting, that I think there's maybe something else happens down the line, but there's a sort of comments about apparently Orca was growling, according to Mord, and I wondered, was that sort of setting her up to be tainted also? I think it might be something that happens maybe at the end of the book, but I think there's also a mention about her having a sort of bit of a red mist, or a mist, near the very end.
And the feeling,
talk about that.
The feeling she gets as well, like that's kind of part of it, I think, isn't it? Like it's like a sixth sense almost.
Yeah. I thought it was a very strong section of the book. I think it's really pushing us forward towards this end stage now of the book here. So kick off chapter 46, where we're with Orca again. She's just sort of keeping an eye ahead of or behind for following. They're heading up north towards the Grimholt. They're expecting to find more Vaesen, and they sort of come across another marking at one of these broken oak stones, and they sort of think it's a marking for the dragon god. She's just more training of Liv and Mord and just preparing themselves for the battle ahead. They come round to Varg, and it's just sort of this aftermath then of the sort of fight in the catacombs. Torvik's dead, Vol's gone, Skulk's missing. We have this big bang at the door, and it's Glornir apparently banging at the door, but sort of Varg sort of remarks like, how's Glornir sort of banging that heavy? He's pushing against Einar, like, Einar half-troll, and Glornir's nearly bursting the door down against him. And this is where it's revealed that actually all of the Bloodsworn are actually tainted. So Glornir is Bearkin, Svik is Foxkin, turns out Varg himself is Wolfkin, he's Ulfrirkin, and he's actually a bit sort of taken aback with this news. He wasn't aware of this himself, but at this stage Glornir does invite him to join the Bloodsworn and take the oath. I don't think he takes it immediately, but it's pretty much established that he is now Bloodsworn, and off they go to rescue Vol from Skulk. Elvar, they arrive in Oscaldref. They find sort of just different bits from the gods, like they find a tooth, they think it's from Ulvir, the wolf. They come across this very big giant, like a dead giant, and they find out that this giant's called Askar, and the reason they find this out is from this big tree lady called Vaughn. Vaughn seems to be sort of made out of roots and tree bark, and she ends up capturing Zigvat in their roots because he was being a bit cheeky and sort of saying he was just going to go ahead and take what he wants. She tells them that in fact Leekrifa, the dragon, is actually still held captured underneath the dead tree, and that in fact is not dead like the rest of the gods. And so it turns out that what Grant had said way back in chapter 7 was in fact true, and I was correct. And then Ilska the Cruel and her crew arrive, have also followed these guys here. We then skip to Orca. So she's now arrived at the Grimholt, this big walled settlement of about 40 odd people inside. But she actually hears these cries for help in the forest, so she sort of runs in and she finds this giant bird, this giant raven sort of caught in the frost web of the frost spiders. Then a second raven flies down to help, and these ravens actually can speak, it's chatting English. Then there's a bit of a sort of fight scene where Orca, Lif and Mord end up sort of fighting to help save the ravens from the frost spiders, and I think Lif gets bitten by one of the spiders. During this then the man and the woman arrive. The man sort of raises his staff, saves him a bit I think, but then captures Orca by hitting her on the head. We move to Elvar. So Agnar, leader of the battle, Gwynne sort of walks out to face Ilska, and she challenges him to like a 1-to-1 duel, but actually it's going to be Ilska's brother Scriff that's going to duel him, which Agnar's like, yeah, happy days, I'll do a 1-to-1, use outnumber us, like, yeah, let's just do this, save everybody dying, essentially. There's a very good fight scene here. Scriff sort of takes it a wee bit easy at the start, so it seems, but then it turns out that he is a Dragonborn, and then it turns out actually that Ilska and their whole troop are all Dragonborn, and they are the ones that have all these children in chains. Agnar does manage to kill Scriff, but I think he's quite badly injured, and then the sort of big twist of Elvar's chapter is that Beor just walks up and kills Agnar, just sort of smashes him in the face, I think, with an axe. And yeah, that's sort of how that's left. Final 2 chapters, I believe. Final 3, maybe. Yeah, final 3. So the last Orca chapter, she gets captured by this man taken into the Grimholt. There's lots of Queen Helga's colours about Lif still alive, even though he's been bitten. It's admitted then that they do find out that apparently they do keep Drekka's, all these chained kids, they do keep them in the Grimholt, sort of unbeknownst to the man in charge, really. Guthvar arrives, lots of screaming children. There's a big sort of fight scene here. A Mord, I think, gets stabbed. I've sort of written here that I think Orca might be tainted. I think she goes a bit misty here. The ravens arrive to help out, and they bring along 2 of her buddies, Spurt and Festly, blasting past those 2, and they all sort of help to sort of rescue Orca. Orca sort of walks outside. She sees this white-haired man who had taken her captive, and she sees Guthvar trying to sort of escape in the boats, and her sort of chapter ends of her raising the axe, this big long axe that she had. Elvar, her final chapter, is quite a lot happens here. So we're still just sort of reeling. Beor's just killed Agnar. We think it's because he's tainted. So like Ilska's tainted, she's going to look after the tainted. There's another big fight scene. There's a shield wall. Gren sort of takes charge here because I suppose the other guy's still tied up. Sigvad. Vaughn ends up getting killed in fire, so the tree lady gets burnt by Ilska, and then they sort of march on to this dead tree and they cast a spell. And there's this sort of big roar and banging at the ground. And then the dragon god, Leek Rifa, sort of breaks free, along with these sort of 3 winged people. But these winged people are sort of attacking Leek Rifa, but Ilska and the Dreg save the dragon. The dragon god, Leek Rifa, transforms in this sort of lady. She has a lot of chats with her children, the dragonkin, so Ilska and her crew. And Elvar and Gren are just sort of lying there watching this, and watches Leek Rifa fly off, and Ilska and her warband full of these dragonborn tainted sort of follow by. And Elvar's chapter sort of follows of as far as words, only blood, death and misery will come of this in regards to going to the Ulskadref. Final chapter of the book then, so Varg still sort of coming around from the news a bit of being tainted, and they're sort of trailing Skulk up through the Boneback Mountains, and they come into this big sort of timber wall of these burning towers, and the ground's just sort of littered with all these dead people, and they find this woman just sort of sitting there with her long axe. Orca, this turns out to be, and she's just sort of sitting, long axe in hand, and all these sort of free kids, chained kids in the face, and so like Thessaly, Spurt, and she's just sort of muttering to herself that like he's not here. And then up steps Glornir, sort of head of the Bloodsworn, and Glornir happens to know Orca. Turns out he was Thorkel's brother. And that is how things end. So people have diverged on top of each other. Varg and Orca are now together, and well, we know Elvar's up around that sort of section of the map as well. So that was the ending of the Shadow of the Gods. Michael, would you like to give your thoughts on that sort of action-packed final few chapters?
Yeah, there's a lot to go over there. A lot happens in the book. It's very, very packed. with the climactic big burst, everything pushed together. It reminds me a lot of Brandon Sanderson, the way he ends his book, where he just stuffs everything into the final, like 20, 15, 10% of the book. It just all gets revealed and all goes crazy chaotic, but I really love that, and I really enjoyed it in this book as well. Varg being tainted, I thought was a pretty good twist. I thought it was pretty satisfyingly done, and I think it's a good decision for taking the story forward. I think it's an interesting place to go with it. The Lake Rifa stuff, that was really great. That was really great. Another great place to take the book, to have them kind of, well, at least have one of the gods resurrected and, well, set free from their prison. It's very. I would actually look forward to see the ramifications of that if we ever did cover the second book. And the orca scene with the ravens and the spiders again was a pretty good scene. And the duel, as you said, with the Dragonborn was a fantastically written fight scene again. The Bjor twist I found extremely shocking at the time, and as you said, you just trying to think for it. There's just so much that happened. And Alvar's battle scene, of course, or the
very hectic sort of final few chapters.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah. And I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to touch on before I go to the final chapter, but if something comes up, I guess I can circle back. But the final chapter as well was a great reveal that Orca had ties with these people, that Glornir was Forkel's brother, and it would appear that Orca is tainted and was probably a former member of the Bloodsworn, as was Forkel. So you expect that they're all going to do a team up in the next book and go and look after, find Orca's child together. I think that would be a really interesting direction, and I quite like the fact that they finally have converged. I kind of wanted it to happen earlier in this book, but it's good that it happened at this point, I suppose. But I thought it was a really thrilling, great way to end the book. It just completely stuck the landing in every way it could.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Johnny, I know you were excited to chat about this.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed the ending. Like you said, it was really chaotic, a lot going on, a lot of fighting, a lot of big reveals. Like I said, it is, very much set for the next book, and yeah, I would definitely be interested in doing one of the books in the future, or like the follow-up books. First, start with Varg's storyline. I really enjoyed that. Like I said, that was probably my favourite storyline because of I think it's throughout the book, even the name, the Tainted, is these people are not well, they're treated badly in this world, or they're looked down upon, and even Varg is ignorant to most things he even knows that, and he is it's almost like he's disgusted to find out that firstly that everybody else around him, this Bloodsworn, is tainted, and then finding out that he himself is tainted. He's this thing that he's maybe thought, I don't know if it quite would say that he hated it, but he's maybe been taught to hate or not and he actually turns out to be it. I just thought it was brilliant. And yeah, when it goes back and explains, or when they're explaining it to them and they're talking about do you ever have any you had strength when you needed it, so you just all of a sudden find you, or whatever, when I was fighting Aina and he's got this animal kind of instinct, they bite him and stuff. And it's these unexplained things that was happening throughout his life, were just suddenly explained by this. I just kind of thought that was brilliant. Elvar's stuff was very, very interesting. The twist was madness. Did not see that coming. And the stuff with the dragon getting released, I thought was really good as well. Just in not even just for Elvar's story, but just because the dragon's now out in the world. And it's kind of what other god, you're assuming now the other gods, even though I know some of them are dead because you have their skeletons and stuff, or where the cities are all built around, but you're there's probably other gods, that are imprisoned or out there. So I think that's another thing to be looking forward to in the next book. I think that particular story, although I didn't enjoy the story throughout, I think the ending, although bad for Elvar, yeah, was definitely a good ending. And Orca's stuff, again, just kind of kept going the way it was going, where, you know, she was just slowly kind of building, and yeah, it just unleashes in the form of what we assume was her having, like, you know, her power unleashed, like in the form of her being tainted. And again, it had another thing, the Game of Thrones, you know, when they, you know, Daenerys goes into the fire, and then the next day she comes out and she's unhurt and stuff. It was kind of, and the like dragons are like sitting on her shoulders and stuff like that. I felt like that with this, you know, she had a wee like Vestley and stuff sitting about her. I was just kind of picturing that. But yeah, I thought it was good then, you know, the crossover, or like, you know, the fact that now, again, another thing to look forward to is like the team up of her like joining back in with the Battlesworn, or sorry, the Bloodsworn. There's a mixture there of the the Bloodsworn and the Battlegirl. But yeah, I thought the ending was brilliant. I liked, again, sorry, just on Orca's story was the whole thing with the ravens coming to help, and that was like because of something about like a spider being caught in the spider's web, and it's like, I think it was like her having a conversation with her son earlier in the book about, like, you know, the spider is about to eat like a moth, and the son says, you know, you should
right.
Yeah, you should free them off, and she's like, no, this is the way nature is. You have to just, you know, let nature do its thing. And the son says, yeah, but that's not a very good way to die. Again, he's probably, you know, kind of linking that to, you know, dying with honor, or die, you know, go down fighting, whereas obviously that you're caught in a web, you're helpless. So she decides to save the ravens from the spiders, and then obviously, you know, comes back to help her then, that the ravens come back to help later. So I thought that was really good. Kind of tie into the story, and like a kind of a real personal moment for her and stuff. So yeah, I thought the ending was very strong, and yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Thank you both. I think something I'll talk about a bit more, but something Michael said there about the way Brandon Sanderson just crams everything into the last 10-15 like percentage of the book, you know. I felt that, yeah, this book was just very top heavy at this sort of stage. There was just so much happened, but I loved every second of it. I think everything, it was just the perfect sort of ending for the book. I mean, yeah, flaws, I wish they'd maybe met up sooner. I think it was, we were being aged for chapters that they were all heading north, and they were all around these mountains, but they don't actually meet really at all until the very last scene of the book at all. I'm very excited to see what happens now with Leek Rifa being freed in the second book. I do think I will listen to that quite soon, actually. I'm very excited to pick up what happens in the next book. But yeah, I thought it was a very strong ending. Overall, I think all three of the chapters had some highlights there in that final section. And unless Michael has anything more to add, I will close proceedings.
I just wanted to say just about that Brandon Sanderson thing too, because it's funny. I actually read on Goodreads, somebody brought up, because there's a nickname for the way Brandon Sanderson ends his book called the Sanderlanche, which is just this avalanche of plot stuff being revealed and everything going crazy. And then they said John Gwynne needs his own, and I think they said like the Gwynneado or something like that, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, Gwynneado was pretty good. But yeah, I thought it was just a very, very hectic but very good ending.
Yeah,
definitely. Just leaves me wanting more.
Yeah, definitely.
Leaves me needing a wee break, but wanting more nonetheless. I think, because yeah, I'll leave it there for now. So yeah, I think that's our sort of talk through the summaries of the book there now. So I mean, on to our star ratings. Would either of you like to go first? Would you like me to read out Stephen's first?
Well, maybe give Stephen's summary and his star. Her
give
star
Stephen's.
Yeah, okay. I'm just going to read it verbatim here as they sort of given it to me. So, Stephen's general review. He couldn't get into it at all, which he was surprised about. Type of setting, background and lore are right up his alley, but he didn't think much of the plot, which he's putting air quotes there. I think his main issue was that it was overly descriptive, like to the point where it felt like the actual story could fit into a couple hours max. Every mundane little thing was described in great detail, and it became very frustrating, especially because he was trying to get invested in 3 characters, and the paths switched every chapter, and 2 of their stories, Varg and Elvar, felt like they started in the middle. Those things combined made it very difficult for him to get invested. This was compounded further by the repetition of certain phrases and some names sounding overly familiar. He loved describing the brain, thoughts, or thinking with thought cage, and it felt very phoned in at times, like he ran out of Norse phrases very quickly and just repeated. The name that really got to him was Dreka. He just mentioned it was hard to sort of keep track of who's who, but that guy, particularly because he's first mentioned when it's sort of mentioned about Brekka being taken, and Stephen's like, seriously, you couldn't have come up with a name that wasn't that similar. Then getting on to the air quotes plot itself, it was very mundane and very tropey, I thought, or he thought, which isn't always a bad thing, but along with the other issues, it just wasn't good for me. At times I wondered if it could be AI generated. Jesus. Orca was the interesting character for me, but the build-up was a bit slow. At the start, I thought Varg was going to be the one I liked, but it got boring and seemed to go nowhere fast. I had little interest in Elvar the entire time. Part of me wondered if this would have been better if it wasn't a Pav-style book, and instead 3 separate books that eventually led into a 4th when their stories converge, and then switch to the Pav style when the characters are established in their mind. I like books that do Pav from the ground up, but when there's so much switching and so little development per chapter, it all falls flat for me. Any guess for what score you give it?
Well, first of all,
based on what
go ahead, Michael. Go you first.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, like, he has like agreed with a lot of the things we didn't like as well. Like, he's just maybe a bit more. You know, he had a bit more pain with them, but I kind of agree with a lot of the things he had pain points with. Like he said about the description of the great detail, and we talked about that on the clues and stuff. So, like, yeah, I feel like he is on a similar kind of line with us. It's just he just felt a lot more strongly in the negative direction with it.
Yeah, I think he just took it very, very badly, whereas we're just like, yeah, it's just more world building, just more descriptive and just adding to it. You know, we just get along with it, whereas it seems to really wind him up.
I'll guess a 2 from him.
Right, you guess a 2, Michael. What are you guessing?
I think he gave Mistborn 1.5, so I'm going to guess he gave that the same.
He gave it, well, we haven't really mentioned this, but we had discussed about changing our scoring system before this episode, but we've decided against that, I think, or at least we're postponing it for now. But he said he would give it a 0.5 out of 5 stars. If 0.5 is not allowed, then he'll give it 1 star. So he wants to give it the lowest possible score he can, which is a 1.
It's been a while since we've had a 1.
Yeah, probably for me.
Yeah, I think I agree with
1
Jonathan.
out of 5.
He seems to have the same sticking points, but they're these absolutely massive things to him, whereas for me they kind of were just minor gripes, you know? They doesn't feel like it didn't destroy the fabric of the story the way it seems to have done with him. But yeah, I'm quite shocked that he was that negative on it. AI generated, but yeah, I just wanted to, before we give our scores too, I just wanted to discuss with the listeners, just in case there's any confusion on our scoring system too from their end. Our scoring system is based purely on subjective views, and we score between 1 and 5. That means, and we go up in 0.5 increments, so that means there's 9 possibilities of scoring. So number 3 is the 5th increment. So number 3, a scoring of 3 stars means that you're positive and negative in equal measure. A 3.5 is light positive. A 4 is moderately positive. A 4.5 is strongly positive. And a 5-star means that you loved the book or found it amazing. Likewise, a 1 means that you hate the book, you despised it. Basically, it's all subjective language. So it's our own opinions on it. Just because we were discussing the scoring systems, just so it makes sense to anybody listening as well, what we kind of base it on.
Thank you for that, Michael. Either of you want to give a wee final summary or just whack in your scores? Michael, I'll ask you first, I suppose, since we've been doing that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed a lot of aspects of this book. I thought the action scenes were really well done. I thought the world building was phenomenal. I've read a lot of epic fantasy, and it's up there with some of the best in terms of world building. The characterization If it was like as strong as, say, like George R. R. Martin or Robin Hobb or something in terms of characters, I think this book would be an absolute classic. But I think the characterization just isn't quite at that level. The plot, I thought the plot was very strong at the start, and the middle, it got kind of, it felt a bit fillery to me at times, except for Orca's POV. Varg's and Elvar's felt a bit fillery to me, and I couldn't quite connect with it. The ending was phenomenal for everybody's POV. All of that was really good stuff. I think on the balance of things, with the weaker plot in the middle anyway, and the characters not being quite the level of amazing that the world building was, I'd say I fall about moderately positive on this book, so I'm going to give it a 4 stars.
Thank you, Michael. Johnny, what would you like to give it?
Yeah, overall I enjoyed it. I did think the world was very well developed, very well described, if not too well sometimes. Some stories or some chapters I really enjoyed it, and then there were some that I feel were just filler and were quite boring, especially a lot of Elver stuff. And I will agree, although I really enjoyed Varg stuff and the camaraderie, I can understand the story maybe stagnated a bit as they were traveling. Like, it didn't seem like it was going anywhere. It was more of just sitting around talking stories and stuff, and Varg doing his training and all, which I thought was okay, because you then had Orca's stuff as well going on, which was always kind of progressively, it was always moving forward and the story was progressing. So I thought it was okay to have that. But then you had Elvar's again, which is even more stagnated, and just didn't really enjoy it all, and that was just too much, I think. Agree that the start was really good. The middle was probably my least favourite parts, and then the end was brilliant. It was really strong and has really set up a good kind of setting for the next book. So again, maybe some negative about it is that this, I don't think, if you don't have the story going nowhere, it's maybe not a great standalone book. As a standalone book, maybe it falls down a bit, just because it is reliant now on the story going somewhere. But it has, again, left, it is a trilogy and it is designed that way, so I guess that's okay. But overall, I enjoyed it, so I'm going to give it a 3.5.
Perfect, thank you, Johnny. I would agree with probably most of what both of you are saying. I think it's a very strong start. I think there's definitely one character for me who falls down, but I feel like you two, I feel like it's a different character. But I did find just the middle section was maybe a bit more fillery, apart from Orca, and then very strong ending. The stuff like the thought cage and the overly descriptive stuff didn't bother me at all. If anything, it just sort of helped me to remember the characters a bit, which is the whole point.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I suppose. I had a very, very good time. I had a very stressful time trying to actually write up my notes for it. Don't get me wrong. I think if I had to rate the experience, I would say it's probably been the most difficult review of mine. Purely.
And this is the guy who
just
brought
because,
you Blood Meridian.
Yeah, I think this was probably more difficult, because at least Blood Meridian at least had chapter summaries online. I didn't have to sit and type up my own 27 pages of notes. I would love to know how many words I've written up, but it was, apart from that, I still had a great time with it. That didn't take away from the actual enjoyment of the book. I do think I will admit there are flaws in this book. I think I would still say I enjoyed all 3 POVs a lot. I do have a definite ranking, as mentioned, like Orca, Elvar, Varg, but I think all 3 had a very strong finish. I want to go for a 4.5, but part of me thinks that might just be host bias. But I'm going to stick with it. My heart says 4.5. I'm looking at sort of previous books I've given a 4, and I still think I've enjoyed it more than those. So I'm going to stick in at a 4.5. I'm very excited to crack on with the series, and I think the third book in the trilogy is actually released next month on my birthday. So if I can get the second one done, I might even get the third at release and see how it goes.
Yeah, I can completely see why this would be like a 5-star for a lot of people. The thing that just shocked me was that it seemed like it was a 5-star for everybody. It was like when I read the reviews online, that was what shocked me. But I can completely see it being a 5-star for a lot of people.
No, a lot of people are definitely, there seems to be a lot of people that love this, and then there seems to be a lot of people that are very indifferent. No, I had a good time with it, definitely. I mean, comparisons, if we want to move on, comparisons to other media, I mean, I've never watched the show, but I think Johnny has, like, Vikings. Game of Thrones would be one of them, I suppose.
Give me a lot of Skyrim vibes at times.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed the Orca point of view chapters, you would probably enjoy Joe Abercrombie's First Law series. It's very of that vein. Put it this way, if Orca was on that book, she would fit right on.
Good to know. Definitely good to know.
And no, obviously we covered the Norse mythology book from Neil Gaiman as well. That's quite similar as well. And sort of
I suppose that sort of touches on that, definitely. But yeah, I don't really know if there's anything that really comes close to it in such a way. I think it is sort of different in its own good way, to a degree. There was nothing else apart from what we sort of mentioned I could sort of think of comparing that to. Will we move on? Does anyone have any trivia?
I did not look up anything, to be honest.
I mean, the one thing, I didn't want to say it earlier, but the one piece of trivia I have, and one thing that you have essentially mentioned, was about, like, John Gwynne's obsession with Vikings.
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere that he is literally like one of these lads that goes out and does like reenactments and all the rest of it. Yeah, he's a Viking reenactor.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me at all, yeah.
Yeah, so I think him and his kids and his mates just go out and stand.
You can feel his love and the descriptions shields. And everything. You can.
I think that's maybe part of the reason why he's so descriptive on the armor and everything as well. I think he's just so into it.
Yeah.
Which I knew that from the start. I think I read that quite early on that he was a Viking reenactor, so I think I already was understanding of the sort of the love he already had for this sort of
subject matter,
mythology and whatnot. So yeah. But I mean, apart from that, I don't really have any other trilogy. As I say, it seems to be a sort of lesser known series I'm basing on compared to other things. I've never come across.
I think it's just because it's newer. I think
it's only been the last couple of years.
I think compared to like the other fantasy books we've covered, which is Tolkien and Sanderson and Rothfuss, who have all been around for a good long time, you know. This series
for
is
ages.
very new. Yeah.
Oh, fair. Alright, well let's move on to what we're consuming and then a bit of plugs. So Michael, I'll go to you first. Have you been up to much since we spoke to you last?
Not much, to be honest. No, I did my half marathon run, which was agonizing because I wasn't as well trained for it as I was last time. But I did my best, like 5k and 10k time in that race, and then dropped off massively. But I'm glad to have it done with, and I've cut back the running a bit. But I still want to train for a marathon, but I'm gonna train more gradually and gently because it's not until May and there's plenty of time.
Yeah.
But trying to think. Books. Well, I've read ahead of we know what we're doing next book. We'll say that soon anyway. I've read that book, and I've read ahead as well because the book after that is my pick. So I know what that's gonna be. So I've been reading those, but you will hear me talking about them more in depth on the episodes themselves. Trying to think. Been listening to a lot of music, a lot of different albums, but TV wise, not been watch. I don't think I've really watched much TV. I watched Deliverance, the horror movie on Netflix. Thought that was pretty okay. You know, as far as movies that you watch on Netflix are these days, I really think like algorithms have like ruined media in a lot of ways. Don't know what people think about that, but I just think we're in a kind of bad period of movies and TV shows, and I think people writing to algorithms and trying to please algorithms has had a big role in that. It's not the only thing to blame, but it's part of it, in my opinion. I watched the presidential debate. I know you guys all love it when I talk about politics. I won't talk about it much, but I thought there was a clear winner. I'll say that's all I'll say about it. But yeah, just not been that much. No.
Well, yeah, fair bit. Johnny, have you been up to much?
Well, after I finished, I actually had started, I think, talking about the last podcast. After I finished our last book, The Last Wish, I moved on to listen to the second Witcher book. And I've also finished the first season of the show again. Going to continue on and do the second season, which I have seen, but I haven't seen the third season yet. So I would like to move on and do that. I will continue with the Witcher books, but I'm going to read something else in the meantime. I'm not sure what that will be yet. I'm actually listening to a book. It's 30th. Let me actually just get the title here. It's the Diary of the CEO one, the 33 Laws of Business. So basically, it is quite a famous book at the minute. It's more or less some young, like one of them 30 under 30 members. He started his first business when he was like 18 and stuff, and has since had loads of successful ones. So it's kind of his laws to being successful and being a good entrepreneur and whatever. Just because, yeah, I'm just interested to see what's the deal there. I don't know if I'd be interested in starting my own business or anything, but yeah, just interesting to listen to. But yeah, after I finish that, I'll then pick up another, fiction book. So I'm not sure what that will be at the minute. As obviously as well as what the books we're covering in this podcast, just one of my own ones. But yeah, TV-wise as well, like I said, I watched The Witcher. I've also been rewatching Breaking Bad, so I'm almost finished the second season now. Yeah, just loving rewatching it. Just such a brilliant show. I've been doing some PC gaming as well. I was playing a bit of, there's a new one came out there, Age of Mythology, which is made by the same people that make Age of Empires. It's more or less the same game, to be honest. It's just modernized. But yeah, I've been playing a bit of that. So a bit of strategy kind of stuff. Yeah, that's about it.
Busy. Thank you for that, Johnny. What have I been consuming? I feel like I've been doing loads, but not been doing much. I've been trying to read hard copies a lot more. I sort of mentioned a wee bit about Brandon Sanderson there, so I actually got the first Mistborn book out of the local library and had to panic read through that in a few weeks, which was very difficult. It's a very big book, very dense book. But I really enjoyed that book, actually. I've requested the library to get the sequel in for me so I can start that soon.
Oh, really? The whole series is really good.
Yeah, there's loads of them, isn't there?
Yeah, there's two more in that trilogy, and then there's a new, it goes into the future then.
Aye. I knew there was more sequels, but yeah, sort of different stories. Yeah, so I really enjoyed the first book. I thought was very good. I know it was a book that also Stephen slabbered about. So. Yeah, and I'm currently reading a book, a Booker Prize listed book. It's called My Friends by Hisham Matar, which is something a bit different. It's not a fantasy book for once, but actually very, very much enjoying it. I would highly recommend to anyone that's looking for a good read. Quite easy read, not too long. Should only take a few hours, I would say. But yeah, it's a good book. It's My Friends by Hisham Matar. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts recently. I'm listening to Comedy Bang Bang again. It's been a long while since I've listened to that. Got back into that a wee bit. Listened to a lot of The Rest is Politics. But again, I'll not chat politics. If Michael's not allowed to, I'll not chat much politics either. But no, I just quite enjoy the Rest is Politics. It's quite a easy listening podcast. Stick on in the background. Makes me feel a bit smart.
The listeners don't even know I've talked about politics so much more than actually appears on the feed.
Already delete half of it.
Yeah, there was one time I just talked about the Tories for some reason. It had nothing to do with the book, and I was like, "Oh, just take it out, Michael."
Just delete it. It. I've not really played any video games, but I managed to get Hogwarts Legacy on sale for £19 the other day. So
Nice.
I've managed to play like an hour of that. I've not played very much of it, I'll be honest with you, but that's probably what I'm going to try and get into next between my reading and whenever I have the time. Also just sort of doing up the flat at the minute, so that's taking up a bit of time and energy also. But that's me, not much else. I don't have anything to... Well, no, I do have a plug. I actually finally have a plug, but I'll let you guys go first. Michael?
Yeah, so over the last like year and a half, I've been like writing a book that I meant only to be like an episode of my horror podcast, and then I just kept writing and kind of overtook and got way longer than I intended it to. I have no idea what I'm doing with it. I'm just trying to get it done, and then I'll think about that in that regards. But I'll probably talk about like what it's actually about and the plot and stuff on the next episode, because the next episode is going to be our third highest downloaded episode ever because of what the book is. So I'll probably talk about it a bit more on that.
Johnny, anything to plug for us?
I have released another blog post. I'm part of doing technical blogs at the minute, and yeah, it kind of got a good reception on like LinkedIn where I posted it. But yeah, it's about like REST API and Q. So yeah, people can. I think I'll just in the notes of this episode just kind of link I do my writing on Medium. So yeah, I'll just link that there. But yeah, that's about it.
I finally have something to plug. I mean, it's plugging this podcast, but I finally taken it upon myself to try and be the social manager of this podcast. So I have made us an Instagram account, which is just the Audiobook Club podcast. If you're looking for us, to follow us on Instagram. I've grown us to a massive 20 followers. I know. Big going. So any listeners, please give us a wee follow for all the content.
Listeners in the future now just going up to look it up and they're like, what are you talking about? There's 200 million followers.
Yeah, so I mean, let's see what happens. But yeah, I've made that. I've started posting again on our X account, our Twitter account, at audiobook_club. Again, I've only done one post, but it was just to sort of promote the Witcher.
I'm really not sure about the future of X, but we'll see.
I just thought I'll try and be a bit more on the socials, try and do something, just to even sort of let people know what we're up to. But I'm also terrible at social media, so yeah. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, where we go. Okay, well, the person that's actually going to handle our next pick, well, it's not really a pick, but Stephen is going to be the one hosting that episode, hopefully. But he's not here, so would anyone like to... Yeah, he can't. One of us will.
Do you think I'll just do it?
I'm sure any of us can do it, really.
If Stephen can't, you can do it, Jonathan, because you haven't done a What This Book Is series yet.
Yes. Well, Johnny, do you want to tell us what the next pick is?
Yeah. So, following on for our first, this is now going to be coming into our third year of activity. So we've almost completed 2 years of doing this podcast, and our very first book was Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and then roughly a year later we did Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. So it is now befitting, and it has come to that time of the year. So obviously the episode that we'll be doing this book on will be released in November, so that's what we've kind of decided is our episode for covering a Harry Potter book. So we will be covering the next Harry Potter book, which is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. That is written by J.K. Rowling and narrated by Stephen Fry. So I'll take guesses on what you think this book's about. But yeah, looking forward.
There's a tiny man.
Tiny man fighting were-dragon wolf thing.
Azkaban sounds vaguely like Alcatraz, so I'm going to guess that Clint Eastwood is in it somewhere.
Could be.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That's obviously always a big episode for us because it's our yearly check-in now. So it's a nice episode to do. And it's also because we know those plots inside out, so nobody has to do any massive note taking or reading up or anything.
Exactly.
Oh, it's going to be such a relaxing listen. And if Stephen hosts, we give it 1 star.
It could be. We could no spoilers or nothing, but we could be looking at another full. This could be our first full 4 5 stars. Could be. I'm not saying it will be.
We'll see.
Could be.
Could be. We'll see.
But looking forward to it. I'll see you guys there.
See you guys on the flip
Same
side.
side there.